Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, home of the best chat on the internet, and of course, the show where we go above and beyond the review to get into the craft, story, and meaning of the films we're watching. Today, of course, we're going to be looking at The Suicide Squad again. And we've also got a little sneak peek for you on what we're going to be looking at next week. And we might have some company tonight. So I know we've got a great show for you. Let's get into it. Before we do that, though, I want to tease our next week's show. Want to let you know we're going to be doing it Sunday morning, so either 10 or 10:30 Central Daylight Time. That's 10:30 in the morning or 10 a.m. in the morning, still to be confirmed. And of course, we're having our man in Chennai, India, Shashank Vachari. So that's going to be an awesome little extra to the show next week. And you can perhaps start to guess on what we're going to be watching next week. All right. Now that they've gotten that bit of business out of the way, let's welcome my co-host, the man with the most, Mr. Jim Chloboyko. How you doing, my friend?
Good. I noticed we're wearing shirts with buttons on them. I can't help wondering if it's because we have a guest on.
Better get the cheesy dust off me.
Yeah, exactly. I almost ironed this thing. I believe that's what they call it, the process of
hung it
out
up.
a shirt. Yeah, but anyhow.
So
Yeah.
how are you, my friend?
Good. Just watching the summer go by pretty quick, and still operating from the second base here. But I think
Yeah.
I might be able to pop in for a bit next Sunday, but we'll talk about that later. It's a transit day for me, so
I understand.
It's all good. We finally had some rain here in the lower mainland, so we had a weekend of rain, which normally would suck, but everybody's dying for it, so that'll hopefully green things up. It's a bit of a drought here, like in Manitoba and elsewhere, so yeah, it's been good.
And from what I understand, it even took the edge off of at least some of the fires near where you are.
Yeah, it's
Excellent.
been kind of, if you watched any of the, I know you're not a football fan, but a lot of this, there was a couple of CFL games last night in Alberta. They were both cloudy skies. So I think that's an indication that there's a big swath of a low pressure system, which is, all of a sudden everyone's looking forward to rain in the summer, which is kind of a weird thing. So anyway.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, listen, before we welcome our guest, we do have some folks in the chat. So why don't we take a quick, let's say hello to everyone. Oh my goodness. We've got both coasts, both sides of North America covered. Ms. Katie Fowler hailing from Halifax. How are you doing, Katie?
Hey, Katie.
And then not far from there, the Upside Down in Buffalo, New York.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Just covering all kinds of bases here.
Yeah, no doubt.
And of course, speaking of warm weather and dry, our good friend, DMG, Dragon Movie Guy, hailing from Las Vegas. Great to see you, my friend.
Woo! We got Great Lakes. We got coast. We got two oceans. We got the desert. What else?
We got it all. We got the desert. We might have the desert next to an ocean.
Yeah.
And Richard L.
Oh, my gosh.
It's just everybody. All right, great to see everyone in the chat there. We're going to get right to it because, of course, we've been doing pretty well, keeping to our time. We've got a movie that is both silly, but I think still has a lot to talk about, some meat on its bones. But first and foremost, as everyone knows, we start with what we call when we're talking about a film, we talk about the social nutrition checklist. And that, we talk about whether or not the film was union made, whether or not it passed the Bechdel test. Of course, is the film class conscious? But we always lead off with, did it qualify for the ReFrame stamp, which is really kind of a metric to judge how diverse the film is above the line, stars, producer, director, writer, and amongst its senior crew. Now, that is a gross oversimplification of what the ReFrame stamp is and what the ReFrame Project is, which is why we brought in a ringer tonight. We are very fortunate to welcome the director of the ReFrame Project, Ms. Andria Wilson Mirza. Andria, welcome
Hello.
to Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for having me.
The pleasure is very much ours. Jim, if it's cool with you, I'd like to start right away with Andria and just ask her, you know what, Andria, could you give us a better elevator pitch than what I usually kind of mumble through on our shows on what, not just what the ReFrame stamp is, but what the ReFrame Project is?
Absolutely. I'd love to. So ReFrame is an organization that was founded out of the Sundance Institute and Women in Film as a joint alliance, a joint coalition that was all about how do we address and improve gender equity in Hollywood. So one of the first products that was released by ReFrame was the ReFrame stamp, which is essentially a mark of distinction presented to films and television shows that hit, as you said, these kind of key metrics in their hiring practices. Are they hiring women? Are they hiring women of color? Are they in decision-making positions? All that good stuff. So we dole out the ReFrame stamp, as I said, to both feature film and television production throughout the entire year. We just made our TV announcement a couple of weeks ago, which showed some huge improvements actually in episodic content, which is very interesting. And then ReFrame has additional programs that kind of try to tackle this major pervasive issue from, different sides. So we also have a pipeline program called ReFrame Rise, which supports women directors in their work in the industry. And then we also have a series of culture change programs that we deliver directly to the studios in Hollywood. So working it kind of from the consumer angle, from behind the scenes with the studios, and really working in collaboration with all of the amazing organizations that are doing work to advance equity in Hollywood and, therefore around the globe.
Very cool. What brought you to the project? Understand when we were chatting with you just before the show started that we learned you are Canadian, actually. You're, of course, also Angelino, right? If you live in Los Angeles, you're an Angelino. You're now an Angelino, but you are a Canadian. What brought you to the project?
Yeah, well, I'm a proud Canadian. I was the executive director of a film festival in Toronto called Inside Out, which is the largest LGBTQ film festival in Canada. I also work as a film producer. I work primarily with independent projects from women and queer creators trying to move their work to the next level. So I came from Inside Out, the festival where I was leading the org and programming the festival, into advocacy very naturally as that being the space that I was living in. And when ReFrame was looking for new leadership, it really just felt like an ideal fit. It felt like the right time. I also am incredibly privileged to be married to a brilliant filmmaker, writer, director who also lives here in LA. So it all kind of came together, and I'm so grateful to be doing this work from here. Now, that said, through the pandemic, I was basically just doing this work from my apartment, as many people are working remotely. So here in Los Angeles, but spending most of the time looking into this screen, having these kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
Do you find just how much smoother everyone is with the whole online thing? Jim and I started this. Jim and I started this as our COVID, a part of our COVID coping technique. It really was born out of that. But I can only imagine from a producer's standpoint, are you really chomping at the bit as things relax to just, no, I need to communicate with you face to face. I need to see I need to see the team in front of me. I need to see how they're reacting.
Yeah, I'm really eager to get back on set. I'm eager to be doing live Q&As with filmmakers in person. I got to do one for an event a couple of months ago, and I actually got to sit down in a room with two filmmakers for the first time in over a year. And that it made me so emotional because I'd been like y'all, talking to people in these boxes, and to actually share a room and the conversation, just it was so moving. So that's a piece that I am safely, with all the right conditions, hoping to return more to very soon.
What has been one of the most, you look at your website, and folks, the ReFrame Project, the website link is down in the description, and I'll put it up on the screen in a second. But, going beyond the metrics, going on beyond the data analysis, you have a team of ambassadors. You got ReFrame Rise, which I only know from skimming your website. But that's got to have generated some stories. Can you tell us about an anecdote that illustrate the ReFrame Project, what it's doing practically on the ground?
Absolutely.
And how it's changing things?
Yeah, I think the what makes ReFrame really unique in the space of, all of these exceptional organizations that are doing work to change the face of Hollywood, is that all of the work is research based, and it was created and designed with these tactics to have maximum impact. So, with the RISE program, for example, that was specifically designed as an intervention for mid-career women directors. So acknowledging the fact that for many women working in the independent film space, we can get a short film made, we can get 2 short films made, maybe we can even get an independent feature financed and released on the festival circuit. But for us to make the jump to the studio system, and then to have a sustainable career in that system, there are so many barriers and so many fallout points. So with RISE, we're really working with directors who are at that point, who need that targeted support. And RISE is not a traditional mentorship program, it's a sponsorship program. It recognizes, how do you get hired in Hollywood? You got to get on a list. You got to be on the right list to get in the right room. And that, that's 80% of the challenge right there. So what ReFrame Rise does is takes our network of ambassadors, of studio executives, of successful producers, and matches them with these mid-career women directors to ensure that they get to the next level. So for some of our Rise directors, their goal might be, say, I've directed a couple episodes of television, but I really want to direct a pilot. And we had in our Rise class this past session a director named Hanalei Culpepper, who her goal was to direct a pilot, and through ReFrame Rise, she booked the pilot of Kung Fu. And it was just recently announced that she's going to also be directing the pilot of the new Neil Gaiman series, Anansi Boys. So really exciting to see those interventions have that kind of impact.
Where do you see the ReFrame Project in 5 years? I'm sorry, Jim, I've been stupid excited about this interview. So I'm like, I have another question, and I've got all kinds of, I could just go on and on, but Jim, feel free to cut me off.
You can fill me in. And I should say to Andrea that Rob's has been a proponent of this for a long time, and he has it on our checklist on the graphics and that sort of thing too. So he's been a big advocate of this project for a long time.
Well, okay, maybe this is a quick time, Andrea, to, much like the Bechdel test, Jim and I use this, and this is for everybody. Jim and I use this not so much that it's like, oh, what is that? We're adults here. We're all adults here. I clicked the not for children. Never stating that virtual signaling bullshit. We do it as much as Jim and I are middle-aged white guys in our 50s, Canadian. If we didn't do this, we may not notice. Just like the Bechdel test, if you didn't ask the question, you may go through the whole movie saying, I don't see the problem. Ask the question. And it's the same thing with the ReFrame stamp. And once you start asking the question, you start to go, whoa, we have a long list of movies that would never qualify. That
totally.
And so, yeah, But I want to make I want to make sure that it's not a. Although I don't know, Andrea. Let me ask you this: we have to be, though, like Jim and I have got to be, maybe not the only, but one of the very, very few online or traditional that actually say, well, does it have this? Does it have this? Does it? Like, I mean, right? Or is it, no, Rob, there's 20. You've just in Winnipeg.
No, I think, you know what? I think it's so fantastic what y'all are doing, because when, the ReFrame Project started before I came along, right? I came into a work in progress, and it was designed really initially as almost like a B2B, a business to business initiative, right? Mm-hmm. It was, how do we get the studios to get on board with this? It was all about the internal marketing. And now I really see an incredible potential in going to the consumer, because, I think there are many people who are looking for that, that tie-in to their values in what they're consuming. So if there's a way to say, this aligns with what I believe, what I think, what I tell my kids about, how I want the world to look, then I think that's really helpful from a consumer perspective. So I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with folks who, like me, love film, are passionate about, supporting great film and great content, and also are looking at that social consciousness element of it. And, one thing I want to say about the stamp that I found very unique also coming into this work, is that it's looking at, to a degree, gender balance, gender representation. So it's not saying every single role in your crew is staffed by a woman or by someone of an underrepresented gender, right? It's saying, are 4 of your 8 department heads women? Are you
Could
at
we
parity?
At least have half?
Right? Are out of writer, director, and lead cast, we would like one of those roles to be a woman. Yeah. So it's really, in my opinion, in 5 years, it's going to be so easy that everyone will get it, and we'll have to completely look at, what is the issue in that moment. And I hope that gender parity is no longer an issue. I hope that this is so onboarded and so successful that it becomes obsolete.
This is
before, I just wanted to mention for guys like the Upside Dan, who's currently watching, WandaVision was just stamped, given the stamp. So these aren't just these are all across all different kinds of productions as well. Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Oh yeah, no, great point. I understand that it's industry focused. It is. You know what? The great thing, and bring up what I think is your mission statement. I got it from the Creating Culture manual. I got it from your manual. Great. But it's our mission is to catalyze a culture shift, engaging decision makers from the top to ensure lasting gender parity at every level in Hollywood. This leads to a question from our chat. Richard L. says, really interesting, does the ReFrame Project look at only Hollywood productions? For example, would be fascinating to see how Canadian movies compare to US, British, Scandinavian, etc. films.
This is a great question. So ReFrame Project, where it was started by Sundance Institute, which does program international content, but is at its heart, a US-based organization, and also Women in Film Los Angeles. It certainly had a Hollywood focus from the jump. And I think that a big part of what the research indicated at that time was that, well, if Hollywood can do this, the industry writ large will follow. Now, we've seen just the 5 years that ReFrame has existed, many countries, Sweden, for example, has made exceptional progress from a funding perspective in terms of gender parity. Canada also, Telefilm Canada just released recently that in last year's projects that were funded, they actually hit parity in terms of creators. Now, there's a much deeper conversation to be had there about, intersectionality and the identities of these women as well. But I think we have seen this progress. So one of the expansions that I see for ReFrame in the coming years is to take a more global perspective, especially as we see these large studios like Netflix is probably the easiest example, now working in so many countries and producing and financing in so many countries, that they're bringing their corporate values of inclusion into those productions. So we should also be able to evaluate those productions too. So in the current moment, we're only looking at projects that have US distribution. So we do look at projects that were not necessarily produced. There's a number of Canadian productions that have received the stamp.
The domestic market, including Canada, because
yes. Well, and also
a deeper conversation,
a much deeper conversation, but also the roles align. Like, something that is important to consider is that in different countries and different markets, there are different job titles, there are different union structures, there are different ways that films are packaged and put together. So our analysis metric may not fit. Particularly for television, the way television is made in South Asia, for example, versus how it's made in Hollywood is very, very different. So,
well, I suppose in a spirit of cooperation, solidarity, and intersectionality, you want to be one of those identifying partners and leaders within any of those countries that you may want to compare and contrast, so that it isn't like, here we have the solution.
Completely.
Country goes, doesn't fit us at all. Thank you very much, Americans.
Well, and frankly, this is a conversation we have even in producing content in America, because shooting a show in Atlanta is very different than shooting a show in New York, is very different than, shooting a show in New Orleans, is very different than shooting a show, here in LA, in terms of, the population, in terms of how the crew reflects the population of that community. So, I think looking at it on a global scale, absolutely. I don't think it's necessarily about rolling our values into, another market. I think it's about, looking at each community and where the need is, where the opportunity is for those metrics and for those measures to come in, where we can support.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not, film is a global business. One of the things I think, let's say as a Canadian, a lot of the films, I'll bring it up here because I love to do the math, because I'm that kind of jerk. If you look at the current domestic box office, like if you looked at so you got, of course, in the top 10 alone, Black Widow, F9, Quiet Place, Godzilla vs. Kong, blah, 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 you will find, folks, to everyone, Canadian tax credits in almost every single one. Because film is not, yes, maybe principal photography was shot here, except for 8 different second units all over the Elsaf acre. Post-production services, how much post-production is done in Andria? You better equipped to answer this than I am. How much post-production, how much special effects, how much rotoscoping is done in Montreal? It's got to be, because you see those Montreal-based SFX, or not special, visual effects companies. So I think what's interesting about the ReFrame, even though it's focused on Hollywood, so many countries, I think, have a real stake culturally and economically in Hollywood. And so there is an opportunity for everyone to learn and progress. Does that make sense to you guys? Feel free to say I'm talking out of my ass.
Well, no,
it will not be the first time.
I think one of the great points that you raised, is about the tax credit. And I participated in some conversations here in LA around the diversity incentive in the tax credit for shooting in Los Angeles County. And I think that's a conversation that is really growing, which is, how do we tie the financing of a production to these goals that a state or a province or a city might have for advancing equity in a particular industry. So it's directly tied. And I think there's a real opportunity for leadership there.
What, okay, first we got another question from the chat. It is out of scope of this conversation. That said, I have an opinion on this that I will share later when we get it into the spoiler zone. But I did want to, Andrea, do you want to comment on DMG's, what do you think of the Suicide Squad's representation? And again, it wasn't what brought you on. Don't know if you've seen the film. Don't know if it's within the scope of your job. But at the same time, if you want to answer, knock yourself out.
Totally. I mean, I actually haven't seen it yet. I absolutely will see it. I have gone back to the cinema, when my mask and my little bubble of relative safety. I have gone back to the cinema and seen a few things, which has been a real joy. The Suicide Squad does not earn the ReFrame stamp. I think that is likely evident on its face. I'm a huge fan of Margot Robbie. I'm always happy to see, her working. She always, brings a lot. I think she's exceptionally talented. She's also a brilliant producer, in my opinion. And I think her company that she runs is doing some really great things in terms of supporting emerging voices. And I'm a huge fan of what she's done. I think, something that, and this feels tangential, but I'm kind of talking around something that you may notice if you look at the crew list of the Suicide Squad, is that there are several directors working in Hollywood that have, gotten to a really high level, that are exceptionally talented, like Barry Jenkins or Ryan Coogler, that have worked with women department heads throughout their career. In Barry Jenkins, it's, his incredible editor, Joy McMillan, they went to film school together. In the case of Ryan Coogler, it's the exceptional director of photography, Rachel Morrison, one of the first women cinematographers to shoot a film at that budget level. And so as they rise, the women they work with rise as well. So I think for male writer directors, there's an opportunity in how you build your team and how you hire those department heads to really lead by example. In the case of this film, there are a couple of women department heads, I think production design, perhaps, but, when you don't see it in those key roles that we measure, that, we see that impact as well. But I haven't seen the film yet, so from a content perspective, I can't comment.
Yeah.
It's, go ahead, Jim.
Hand up. Still works. From grade school. Just quick question.
Quick interjection. How Canadian?
Yeah. What was the just kind of a fun first question? What was the first movie you saw when you went back, Andrea?
The first movie. Okay, so the first movie I saw in person in the indoor theater was Zola when that opened. I also saw Black Widow. Actually, when I went home to Toronto a few weeks ago, got to see Black Widow in the IMAX in Toronto at the Scotiabank Theatre. So that was a real treat. And I have been throughout the pandemic going to drive-ins as much as possible.
Oh yes.
Because I actually really love drive-ins, and I love the resurgence of them through the pandemic. And getting to have that experience, including I was incredibly lucky to get to see a drive-in screening of Thelma and Louise for the 30th anniversary, which watching that film in a car is actually, I think, what was probably originally intended. It's so fantastic to watch it in a car.
Yeah.
Did you, were you in a rag top in some sort of convertible? Did you?
Sadly, I was not. However, Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon were in attendance, and they actually had one of the film production cars.
Really? One of the picture
site.
Vehicles.
Yeah. So
super cool.
That was pretty magical to see for cool. Sure.
What's your? This is a quick follow up, and I have another one after that. But what's your go-to drive-in theater? Like, where is it in the basin or whatever?
We're looking for a recommend, Andrea.
Right. The thing is, I really love these kind of pop-up drive-in experiences that emerged over the pandemic, right? Like back home in Toronto, I went to a few drive-ins at, the Ontario place, down by Lake Ontario. Here in LA, I've been to them in parking lots, in open fields, on the side of a mountain. There's a great one in Malibu that I think was a wedding venue prior to the pandemic. So, it's necessity is the mother of invention, and definitely getting to see, folks kind of pivot their operations into the drive-in has been pretty cool.
Yeah. I should mention where the question I was meaning to get to was, so in your position, when you watch anything, could be an old movie, could be a new movie, could be a television show that's brand new, do you find it hard to not think of ReFrame when you're watching it? Like, is that an automatic thing for you now, where you're like, and then you're checking the lists and the IMDb page and stuff like that? Is that possible for you to watch without sort of immediately?
That's a really great question. I have always loved film and worked in film because I really believe in the magic and the power of cinema. And like I go along for the ride. I get transported. I get, taken to that place. And, you kind of can't take the glasses off once they're on, like I for sure feel that. And, I think it's what brought me into this work is that, I think initially growing up, like growing up queer, feeling isolated, wanting to see, representations, things that would inspire me, where I could feel, a future, another life for myself. And I think now for me, I want more, now I am looking through that credits list with a fine tooth comb, because for me, representation is not liberation. It's really about, how are the means of production being managed and controlled, and who's allowed into that process. Like, that's what I'm looking for. And that's the piece that I kind of can't turn off, even if I'm really, really enjoying the film.
Yeah. Understandable.
It's interesting you bring that up, like it, kind of a riff on, I'm not necessarily the Marshall McLuhan fan that others may be. I'm not a fan at all, but there's ReFrame, what we're doing with the class consciousness, or whatever you want, our social nutrition checklist. It's kind of the maker is the message, or at least a part of the message is the people who made it, where they came from, who they, but okay, that's kind of a ramble. I swear to God, there's a question in there. Who knows? We'll move on.
I want to say, I hear you, because I think that what we're really looking at now is, we're able to look at a thing and say, I love this thing, but that doesn't mean it's perfect, like there is, and that's how I feel about this industry. I love it, and it's where I dreamed of working my whole life, but that doesn't mean that there isn't room to make it an easier place for people like me to work. Like there still is that room for improvement. And why I say that, representation isn't liberation. It's like, I don't just want, films that star more, individuals of a particular demographic. I want them to be created with the authentic voice and truth of people also from those communities. So it's like that next level, that next step. And of course, like, people getting paid. This is a major industry. How are we, doling out those dollars, and who gets access to them, is really the big question.
What do you then see is and it's something I briefly touched on before, before we went live. Where do you see class in, maybe it isn't necessarily ReFrame. Maybe it's ReFrame 2, or, a few, but where do you see class as another factor in representation? Because, and when I say it's not just the class of the makers, although I think that's important. And as we discussed before, a woman of color is a pretty good predictor in North America of someone coming from a working class or a poor background. But still, given how hard it is to get into film anyway, may still not be as accurate a predictor as, hey, can we have more working class voices above the line and see how that folds out into content? Where do you see, and a perfectly reasonable answer is, well, that's not really what ReFrame is, but yeah, where do you see potentially ReFrame being? How Canadian? Let me give you 8,000 excuses not to answer this question.
No, I'd love
we do not want any social confrontation.
I'll take it. I'll wade right into it. I think where I see the next step of ReFrame, so not in 5 years, but within the year, is an expansion of our stamp, not just our stamp criteria, but our analysis and the data that we're actually looking at, so that, when we're looking at a particular individual who happens to be, a department head on a production, we're working with, a third-party data system that allows that individual to opt into a much wider range of identifiers. Where they could say, well, I'm LGBTQ, or I'm a veteran, or I have a disability. And so that we're able to have aggregate data that tells us a lot more about who is and who isn't included, who is and who isn't working at a particular budget level, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think that when we talk about class, what we really, the
socioeconomic strata.
Precisely, and the crux of the problem is that, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's really held up by these kind of financial ideals. Like, well, giving a film to this individual is more risky than giving it to this individual, and it's all about risk mitigation and liability, and that prevents people from moving forward because of prejudice, because of racism, because of, systemic inequality, and people not getting the opportunity to, even get to a certain level in the business where they can pitch on some of these productions where they could be earning more money. There are a lot of ways that people are kept out. One of the big things that I feel really passionate about ReFrame getting involved in is actually the fight to get creators paid during the development process. I think people don't realize how long it takes to get
hurdle.
Paid. It's wild. Like, truly, the amount of people that, are developing a feature film or, a television production, sometimes for 2 years without seeing a dime. And this is even in a union environment, because there are all of these ways to kind of get around it. It's hugely problematic, and it keeps many people from getting in, because who can sustain themselves without getting a paycheck for 2 years, right? Only people that
you're
come
a
from
cinematographer who has a vision, but you're like, my regular paycheck is shooting other people's
completely.
Effort.
Yeah. And so I think that is the biggest class advancement barrier in Hollywood is just literally not getting paid. And having to find a way to get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something when I first got into the local film, and it's American service productions, right? But you could see it even on the local level, never mind on the LA level, where it's who's supporting you while you are going without for a couple of years, hustling your 3 or 8 or 20 scripts or whatever.
Totally. It's a real challenge. So I think there are so many ways that, class difference and, that intersects throughout the business, and has great negative impact often. But I think the unpaid development is one that I feel really passionate about, finding ways to address that in the system and really create a structure where we're getting a little bit closer to a level playing field.
Gotcha. Listen, I promised we'd have your digital Uber ready at quarter after. That said, we do have like 3 more questions, or let's say I have one more question. We got one more question from the chat. And Jim, do you have another question?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Go. Can you take 3, Andria?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. I'll just text the Uber driver. Okay, Jim, go.
Yeah.
You're up,
well, I
baby.
was just taking a look recently at the website, and it's pretty exciting to see the productions that are getting. It just seems to be coming together really well. I know a lot of projects that I've seen get started and sort of slowly grind to a halt, but this one there seems to be some momentum behind it. Then you have other publications picking up on your releases and your announcements and that sort of thing. It sounds like it's a pretty exciting time for the project. Do you find yourself sort of getting into work every morning, checking your email or whatever? Is that sort of it sounds like it would be exciting for you. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think, I do feel energized by the moment we're in. And, I feel energized by the work that there still is to be done. Like just recently with our TV analysis reports, seeing that, 51% of the most popular television programs of 2020-21 earned the ReFrame stamp. That is a significant jump. It was 33% in the prior year. So it is showing that there are improvements being made. I mean, it's also showing that on that episodic side, it's moving much faster than the feature film side. But, that's a whole other conversation. But I do feel like it is energizing, and based on my conversations with studio executives, we can't let up. We have to keep going. We have to double down, because the goal is sustained and sustainable change. It's not just a trend or a moment. It really has to be like investment in future generations on generations to really see this grow. And so that trickles down to like the fight for better pay for assistants right now that's happening in Hollywood, and other issues. It's we can't just look at the top. We have to look at every way that people come into this business and how we can create a better place for them to work.
I would imagine it's kind of like I'm thinking parental leave.
Absolutely.
You need a certain amount of time. So 1980, Canadian Union Postal Workers struck for it. Mid 93, 94, Chrétien brings it in as policy. There's a magic point, probably around 2000, maybe 2010, where all of a sudden, like the fact that I grew up during this, but right now, if you just ask me about parental leave, all I'd be like, well, hasn't it always been that way? How could you not have it? Like there's that. What do you think that magic number is? Is it 5 years seems a little, there's still going to be too many people who need a procedure like myself, who like a checklist to kind of go, oh, am I really on track? Because if you just leave me to my own devices, through no malice intent, we'll get up. But the older dinosaurs who don't have that, like what is that magic number? 5 years, maybe a little light. 20 years would be wonderful, but I don't know. Would it even be 20?
It's a great thing to think about. And I think maybe the way I feel about it is that we have to acknowledge that everyone has bias, right? We all have bias. We wake up with it. We take it out into the world, and eradicating bias is a goal, but perhaps not a super realistic one during our lifetimes. But I think being able to increase people's intercultural competency, their empathy, and I think having a checklist, having guideposts, having reminders is actually like, we may need that forever, because we're all still looking from our own perspective, as educated as we may become, and as much as that competency may grow. So I think the long game is maybe really just about getting us all to be honest with ourselves and to own that and say, like, I am a work in progress, and these are the tools that I use to make sure that I'm practicing equity in my everyday life, and in my work, and recognizing the power that I have to make change. I think that's the future that I'd like to see.
Gotcha. We still we haven't gotten rid of curbs or speed limits.
Right, seatbelts, you know. Yeah.
Okay. We do a couple. Just DMG asks, Andrea, which studios are the easiest to work with / progressive on a practical level?
Great question. You know, there's pros and cons in every space. I think everyone is taking a slightly different tack when it comes to equity and inclusion within their own company. And a lot of that is informed by the culture of that company or who their target audiences are. You know, something that I will say about Netflix that I have found very interesting and inspiring is that they have a team that really, to go back to the question earlier about the global like interaction with other countries and looking at those metrics, they have teams that are working on talent development in all of the countries where they make content. So including Canada, you know, so that is something that really makes a longer term impact. So like, let's say, you know, they're shooting a film in a particular region where there are no women cinematographers. They would work with local organizations to perhaps start to create an on-set mentorship or a shadowing program so that folks who otherwise may have faced barriers to that opportunity are able to get on set and learn from that. So I think in terms of progressive, like I see that as being genuinely progressive and also really making an impact, right? Like the ability to not create in a way that's extractive or harming the community that you're shooting in, but actually trying to leave something positive behind. Taking that kind of approach would make a really significant impact on our industry if that was something that studios were doing more across the board. Gotcha.
One more question before we get you in your Uber. What about the ReFrame Project, or heck, about anything about what you do now? Andrea, what would you like the public to know that it's either just clueless about, or maybe it thinks is, but really isn't?
I think Hollywood is much more conservative than people think. And, you know, there is a thought that, you know, Hollywood is very liberal, and that the majority of the people that work in Hollywood have progressive values, but it's fiscally conservative. You know, each film needs to make money. There's financial models that are built in a certain way that create a conservative mindset. And so to move forward with progressive values, that's why I say, you know, we have to really keep going, keep it up. And I think audiences and individuals who love movies have the power to push and to advocate for that change via social media, by buying a ticket to films that, you know, are demonstrating that equity. That's really where there is power to change, when we can prove that there is a business case behind making inclusive sets and creating authentic content that can make a huge impact.
Super cool. Is there any, if there was something you could ask Jim and I, our audience, to do tomorrow, that one simple thing, what would it be that could help you forward your agenda?
Great question. I think, you know,
I finally got a great question.
I think the truth of the matter is, like, there really is something to where you're putting your dollars, you know? And so I think buying a ticket to a film that has earned the ReFrame stamp in its first weekend, things like that makes an impact. You know, if we can demonstrate the sales, if we can, you know, show that there's a direct correlation between people learning, wow, this was a really cool, inclusive production that, you know, hired all of these super talented women department heads, therefore I'm going to go and support it. That absolutely has an impact. And, you know, there's lots of organizations also, like locally in different markets, that are doing this advocacy work, that might be supporting independent filmmakers in their opening weekends, things like that. So I think, just being mindful that this is a business, and being able to make that business case really supports us all.
Yeah, there's on your website, and I've just got it up on the screen now. There's all these groups that you guys work with: Alliance for Women Film Composers, Amplify, Asian Pacific American Media Coalition, the Blacklist. I will eventually get on the blacklist. I too could be blacklisted. Okay, Andria, thank you so very much. For folks who want to follow what's going on, like I know for ReFrame, on Twitter, it's at ReFrame Project.
You got it.
And then, of course, and again, these links are down in the description. It's reframeproject.org. Andria, on Twitter, can I share that? I found it publicly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
If people want to engage with you or follow you, see what you're up to, it's Andria Wilson, at Andria Wilson on Twitter. Anything else you want to tell us before we let the door hit you? We've got your coat.
Yeah, got my
the
coat
digital
on.
cars waiting outside.
Well, just, thanks y'all for what you're doing. I think it's so important to create the space for folks to, have these conversations and, really think critically about the media you love. Because that's adds so much to the work that we all do. And I really appreciate your time, appreciate you reaching out. And we'll keep you posted on any exciting developments.
You bet.
Excellent.
You bet. No pressure. Can you be on our show every week?
We would love to have you back, though. I'm sure sometime in the future.
I'd love that.
Don't block our email, I guess.
I would love that, and have fun talking about the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting conversation. It's one of those. You're Canadian. You would understand this reference. Hawkins Cheesies. The king of cheesies. It's one of the reasons Jim and I do the social nutrition checklist. It's to acknowledge that sometimes you just want some Hawkins Cheesies. You look at it and you kind of go, I shouldn't be eating this every day because that's not healthy in any way. And that's kind of our approach. We understand, especially when you look at the vast majority of cinema, the top 25, I cannot believe this, you guys, the top 25 films on the 2021 box office list released, they suck up 89% of the dollars, of the box office dollars. And yet people talk about streaming and everything. Yeah, 6 of the top 10 were doing day and date. Like streaming, like they just take all of the money. So I think work like what you guys are doing, in our little corner, what we're doing is to acknowledge that there's more that goes on than just you sitting in front of the screen, having ideas and images projected on you, and that you can look behind and go, oh, maybe I shouldn't eat as much of this as I should. This might not be healthy. Every now and then, though, you do want a Hawkins cheesy, and that's what the Suicide Squad is.
Well, enjoy your snack and have a great conversation, and we'll see you again.
All right,
thanks again, Andrea.
Thanks so much.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Well, she was great. Good night,
That was
Winnipeg.
fantastic.
Oh,
Another great interview. Yay, Jim. Yay, me.
And she was super popular with the chat. Everyone's gurgling there, so on the side. So that's awesome.
No, it's actually, let's you know what? I love the way the Upside Down captured it. Awesome interview, great questions, everyone. It was great to hear from Andrea. Absolutely, like she was fantastic. What an engaging guest. Always nice to talk to someone who's, such a great advocate for their cause while, being open to, questions from us peasants.
Yeah.
And then of the Upside Down, because he's got to go, because he's got to be up early in the morning. Wanted to say he did love the Suicide Squad. Good night.
Yeah.
It's like a Walter Cronkite moment for the Upside Down. Right on, Dan. All right, we do have a look at this. We have somebody else to welcome. Mr. Curtis Judd. Welcome to the chat, Curtis. Good to see you here, man. Oh, Stephen. Hawkins Cheesies. Google it, my friend. Hawkins, Hawkins. And then, of course, if you don't know how to spell cheesies, I can't help you there.
These cheesies are out of the world.
Oh, wait, he did. He did. Oh, Robert, look to the bottom of the chats. All right, folks, it's that time. We had what a great interview, but now it's time to get back to what we do here, that thing we do, which is overanalyze movies. And tonight we're going to be overanalyzing the Suicide Squad 2, but not. They should just, like, in brackets 2, or there's an asterisk there. Okay, here's the log line. Supervillains Harley Quinn, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, and a collection of other nutty cons at the Belle Reve prison join the super secret, super shady Task Force X as they are dropped off at the remote enemy-infused island of Corto Maltese.
Infused.
Yes, infused. Yeah, like a
Lightly
spice.
Infused with enemies. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, it was written and directed by James Gunn. Stars Margot Robbie, Idris Elba, John Cena, Joel Kinnaman, Sylvester Stallone, Courtney, briefly, Peter Capaldi, and Viola Davis, amongst others. Like a lot, a pretty big, pretty solid supporting cast. Here's speaking of social nutrition, here's the social nutrition checklist. Okay. As we already heard from Andria, no, it would not earn a reframe stamp. Was it union made? Well, yes, it was. Did it pass the Bechdel test? As far as I could tell, it did not, although on a couple occasions it came close. But, close. Close, I said. But close is not yes. Is it class conscious? Although I want to give it an honorable mention for sympathy for the underdog. No, it's not socially conscious, which means for the social nutrition checklist, our little exclusive piece, Jim, this gives it a 25%. What was interesting and is as far as, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, I may have misheard her, but I did ask her before we got on. We're the only one that she's aware of. That was the impression I got. We're the only one that she's aware of that does what we do. Like, not just in our particular format, but that incorporated into everything, we do have this analysis. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, is there 2 or 20? And but it doesn't seem like there is. So,
we got somebody else who's wishing us a good night. We're knowing who the real star was tonight, which is fantastic. Richard, Katie, thanks for popping in. You're out there on the East Coast having a wonderful holiday. Looking forward to more pictures. And plus, you can always pick it up. You can pick up the rest of the show in the replay. DMG, thank you very much for coming. All great questions, folks. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate the questions you asked. That was awesome. And I think it's Jim. Before we get into the spoiler zone, let's keep going. Quick review.
Let's see. I'm that early group that you sent out on the South Beach there. So I'm the cannon fodder, literally. The concept of it is of the Suicide Squad movies. It's kind of a fun one, but I actually felt it got stronger as the movie went along. I was a little worried, and I've had this before. A little worried in the first act. I found it a little bit derivative, and I'll explain why in a second. And a lot of that sort of introducing to the team, and that sort of expositional, and what are the powers of this person, what are the powers of that person. That thing is getting pretty old for me. So it was there's the second action set piece when there was an attack on a camp, basically. It was from there, which is about 35 minutes in. Then it sort of got my attention going, but sort of up until then, I was a little bit worried about how it would go. The reason why I found it derivative, not to the letter, but it reminded me of the Deadpool 2 failed mission / whole recruiting segment in that middle part there, where virtually everyone dies except for one or two of them. And sure, this would be fun if we'd never seen that before, but you can't do the Sixth Sense twice, right? So there was some derivative. It just felt like old hat to me. But once the story was allowed to get some momentum, and it really didn't stop once they got to Cuba. Oh, I'm sorry, Corto Maltese. But once it got to the second, third act, then it actually became kind of fun. This is a summer movie, or it feels like a summer movie. It's one that would have greatly appealed to me when I was a teenager. That with all the creative gore and just the sort of throwing all the usual
and gory it was.
Very gory, yeah. And so it's one that you can sort of, if you're in the mood, have fun with. And I eventually did enjoy it. The performances I liked. I didn't really want to dwell too much on the first one in 2016 because I wanted to take this one on its own. I would invent. This one actually, I think, it kept me interested. Let's just say that. And and I liked Idris Elba. I think he's underused sometimes. The Margot Robbie is she's so suited to this role. Obviously, she totally inhabits it and eats it up. One other thing I'll say too is that the movie. A lot of the good stuff is shown in the trailer. It's not always the case, but I found there's a lot of sort of spoilery bits that I would like to have preferred to have seen as I was watching it. But anyway, so
really?
Ultimately I did enjoy it. I thought it was a bit of a creaky start, and I did like it eventually.
I'm with you on the creaky start. I was actually happy in the first scene, the way that first scene played out. It's like, oh, okay. It's almost, I didn't interpret it as derivative, like I was worried. And then the way it played out, I'm like, oh, this is like a palate cleanser. And now we have the interesting characters. And it's almost like you have these ridiculous ones so that the other ones look cooler, like by contrast, and more competent and more interesting. And so I was I was by the halfway through the first act when you're like, oh, geez, most of these idiots are dead. Great. I was, and like you, the further we got into the story, into the movie, the more I was just enjoying myself. I do think it does, and I'm wondering if in 5 or 10 years we're going to be talking about the James Gunn / Taika Waititi era or take on superhero movies, because they do seem to have a real knack for both having the most fun and just letting it be what it is, while at the same time kind of also kind of subverting it and having some fun. undermining some of these tropes and that. So I'm kind of excited for the next 5 or 10 years. From what I understand, James Gunn is going to be doing more of these DC things. Of course, he's back on for at least one more MCU movie. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see his impact.
Yeah.
I will say to everyone, like this does, you do see James Gunn in it. There's a lot of this idea of bad fathers redeeming themselves, or people without fathers finding fathers, that found family kind of thing that we've noted in a lot of other movies, but seems to be a real calling card of James Gunn's. The gore, without it being like, it's pretty gory, but you don't feel like he's reveling in pain. It's not torture-y.
Yeah.
Or at least I didn't think it was, until you get to the end where it's like, oh, that's horrific, but it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. You do have to get past, and this would be the one thing that I think, one more bouquet. Because they kill so many people in the first scene, and I'm not really spoiling much. It's like our first or second scene. You get time with each character, and enough time that they get to develop. And back to that breathing that we've talked about time and time again, there's moments of just, of characters revealing themselves and revealing themselves and conflicting with others. Like, we really do get to know these people. We get to know which ones are the dipshits, which ones are. We've got a couple of killer villains. Mm-hmm. The villain that's, in Viola Davis, where she's just, just becomes even more awful. And yes, she's the villain on your side, but she's still a villain. Mm-hmm. A couple of the other characters, so it made for a really fun movie. You do have to, and we'll get into more of it later, but I think you do have to get past the stereotype, like a lot of Latin America stereotypes, whether it be the cheap reference to Cuba, which I thought was really lame anyway, or the, at times, like there was one moment, where it's like, that's a little, if you're going to already get into all these Latin American stereotypes, do you also have to do a bit of cultural appropriation? But if you could get past that, and I was able to, this is Hawkins cheesy. This is no off-brand cheese balls. If you can get past that, you're going to have a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a big, smart, dumb summer movie. There you go.
I'm sort of worried for the Corto Maltese, their PR team or their tourism foundation. Really, not that many rats here. They exponentially grow over the course of the movie. But sorry, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Jim, so worth your time? Yes or no?
Yeah, I'd say yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna, again, I've already given the qualifiers. It does get pretty gory. A lot of stereotypes. And a little inappropriate cultural appropriation, but with those caveats, solid recommend. It's Jim, I think this is the funnest movie of the summer so far. Of a 2021 movie. Except Love and Monsters was a lot of fun. I had fun with that stupid jolt, but this was a lot of fun of a movie that came out this year.
Yeah. I this is almost like, I think what Buddy Zach's Vegas movie was, Army of the Dead was sort of trying to strive for a little bit, that was
a pleasant time.
Yeah.
This was a lot more fun than that.
Yeah. No, agreed.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That means we're entering the spoiler zone.
We are.
Everyone
dies.
Indeed we are, Jim. All right. So that should bring us to. Whoops, sorry. That should bring us to the craft. Let's talk about craft. What did you like as far as the performances and everything go? What were the look, the sound, etc.? What did you think?
You know, the look at the start of it, you know, my sort of, again, I really didn't fully get into it until about a half an hour in. I thought a lot of the jungle scenes sort of looked cheap. I mean, I may be wrong, but it was that, you know, Gilligan's Island jungle, you know, obviously shot in what's that little city outside Los Angeles that they always shoot in?
Like Carson
Burbank.
City?
Yeah, like a Burbank jungle.
Backlot jungle. A backlot jungle.
Yeah. So, and it had a lot of that look, and I thought, ooh, this is kind of cheap looking. But actually, as they got sort of further
turn the corner, it's like, hey, that's like from a Star Trek set, like the TV show.
Yeah. Bob Denver was here, you know, a little graffiti or what have you. But I found that it sort of even looked better as it got further along, which may just be me. But there was some cheapness to the look, I thought, you know, when we were talking about budgets and that kind of thing lately.
Do you think, on that, Jim,
sure.
Do you think that might have been intentional? Like, that was also with especially that beginning sequence. Mm-hmm. That was also with the cheesiest, like the detachable kid.
Yeah. You mean the Bay of Pigs sequence?
Circle. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I just didn't, you know, and it didn't.
But
really
you weren't buying it.
I wasn't really buying it, you know, and come to think of it, that you know, when you're doing sort of these sociopathic kind of characters like Harley Quinn and like Amanda Waller, you know, I was thinking, does Deadpool do this kind of thing better? The Deadpool movies do this kind of thing better. That's another conversation entirely. But I mean, I don't know. Further along, it even got more sort of visually inspired, I thought.
Interesting, yeah.
There's that one shot where, well, number one, I should mention that, you know, even though it doesn't get a reframe stamp, is that Margot Robbie is given the action set pieces where she sort of just mows through like Wonder Woman or like Colin Firth in The Kingsman, just mows through like 100 people. And so she's the one that's given that to do. And there's one segment where she picks up a machine gun and she's firing it and screaming, and the flowers appear behind her. And I thought that, you know, and they had that one on the trailer. I would like to have had that one saved because it's pretty inspired, super colorful, almost from an animation kind of almost.
Oh, it had animation. There's little birds. Like later on, it was almost Jessica Rabbit stuff.
Yeah. Or like something out of the sort of the
Jessica Rabbit,
like a dream sequence from Pixar even, or something like that. Like there was some definite inspiration going on there. I even loved the title sequence, or the chapter sequences, I guess you can call them, where it spelled out things and 8 minutes before and now and that kind of thing. I that's something that Tarantino does occasionally, and then he'll drop it in the middle of the movie. It's
also very comic booky. This is what I like. I mean, I felt that this show really had its own take on a comic book aesthetic. Mm-hmm. And a comic book way to divvy up chapters in that. Like there like a few of those set pieces I could really see. I could see how it would be in the page.
Yeah. Or issues in a 6-page volume, you know, or you know, individual issues or something to that effect. No, I know what you mean exactly. And then I kind of dig, you know, when they don't overdo do it. I kind of dig that kind of thing, and they nicely to the movie, and that it fit in. It didn't seem extra, as the kids say these days. But
well, it was a light touch.
Yeah,
like a good, like properly spicing a dish.
Yes,
this a little bit of tarragon, now a little bit of whatever.
Yeah. In terms of the rest of the craft, full of music. You can parse down the movie. The song list at the end was probably about 2 minutes long. Just I think they used "Just a Gigolo" or is that the one? Yeah, "I'm So Lonely," the one that David Lee Roth did a version of all those years ago, and they were using it for playing it on top of Harley Quinn.
Well, and they also did the right at the beginning. What was it? And I think it wasn't Johnny Cash.
I think so.
But maybe it was a Johnny Cash cover, or maybe it was Elvis Presley. Oh, heck. But it was a great kind of set the underdog is going to be the anti-hero is the hero in this movie.
Yeah. No, so they used some of that to good effect. They had all kinds of ages, and they had a little bit of the Ramone kind of stuff.
Little punk rocky.
Little
pop,
that kind
punk
of stuff.
rock.
So a lot of fun that way. The performances I thought were I enjoyed Idris Elba in this one. Even the rat thing, it sort of reminded me of Indiana Jones and the Snakes, but whatever. They sort of played it along to the point that it was literally the final shot, right? And Margot Robbie is amazing. And you can sort of see that culturally too. You see a lot of gals going out for Halloween dressed as Harley Quinn, right? You can sort of see little echoes of it. So I think she's it's gonna, when her career is done, they're gonna look back and say this was one of her roles. And I like some of the supporting cast. I was unfamiliar with a number of them. John Cena, it was good to see him get beaten up, his character, and he plays the dick well.
Yeah, he's a great heel.
Yeah.
Mind you, coming from heel, professional.
Yeah. No, that's the perfect word for it. Because he is sort of vaguely asshole wrestlery. And Amanda Waller is she's scary. Viola Davis, of course, and it's interesting because do you think that's a progression? Because she seemed to get even more demented as the show went on. So that's a question I did have.
I thought she was a little. When you compare her performance here to what it was in the last movie, where the tone was.
It's almost like she's losing it over the course of this movie, and I sort of, the one thing is I don't question her authority. She does seem like a scary lady.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing is having a woman of color representing what would normally have been like an asshole white general or something to that effect,
Yeah. Or a bureaucrat, like a nasty.
Yeah.
The Himmler or Eichmann of the operation.
Yeah.
Well, this is my job, goddammit. You're all not listening to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I enjoyed her performance. I'll have to think about that, Jim.
Yeah.
I found that she was a great villain. And there were multiple villains in here, and that you were always worried about the villain behind you as you're wondering what villain they were going to face. And you knew, well, there's obviously something dark. And as we learn more about Starro the Destroyer, which is right from the fucking comics, pardon my poor language, and how good Starro was. By the end of it, you're like, yeah, feel bad for him. Or there's that weird sort of, I've been tortured, but it's you're bad.
Yeah.
And to a point where there's that weird mix of James Gunn. got horror and comedy all in the same frame, which I think is just genius.
Well,
I'll circle back on that.
Stay Puffed Man from Ghostbusters, but a little more sinister.
A little more frightening.
The other
a little
question
more obviously, that can't be good.
Yeah. The other thing too that I wanted to ask.
Remember, we gotta move. So
save this for later. I was genuinely thinking about this just for my own edification. If you took Harley Quinn and you took Amanda Waller, what alignment would you give them? Oh,
like in D&D?
Yeah.
Well, Harley Quinn, chaotic neutral. Amanda Waller, lawful evil. Yeah, it's just a bureaucrat.
Yeah,
These are the rules. It's just like John Cena's a lawful evil, disciple of hers.
Yeah, pretty interesting.
What did you
think of the craft? Your thoughts there?
I thought the use of music was pretty good. Not as obvious and bang on as Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a reasonable comparison because in so many ways this is Guardians of the Galaxy on Earth. Without it feeling like a total, you're just playing your... And I think the music is a perfect example of he uses it, but he's a lot more subtle. He's actually more restrained than he is in the MCU, where you almost have like music video set pieces. Here, it's a little more, okay, we won't go quite that far. We'll pull it back. We'll make sure it makes sense, unlike in the first movie where they're almost being lazy in their pop music. We want to make sure it feels like it's oldie times. Here's a 60s tune.
Yeah.
Here's a this tune. Here's a that tune. Here, it's a lot more thoughtful, while at the same time, it didn't seem like I'm watching a music video.
Yeah.
The performances are all great. Even there's these nice little moments, and one of them when not sure shot, because I mistook him, which is terrible, what the hell is this called? Idris Elba's character. God damn it.
Bloodsport.
Thank you. Bloodsport. He's arguing with his daughter, and they're screaming at each other in the fuck you, no fuck you, like they're both fuck you. It's a great little moment, actually. And he's like, no, I'm mad because you stole for something so stupid as a TV watch. And she screams back in a great little bit. It does other things. And I'm like, I'm writing that down for Jim. Yeah. It was a great moment, but there's another little moment, and I love, and this I think all goes to the craft of performance, but of directing, of costume design, and that when they're about to kill another guy, when they're about to, it was Savant, I think it was, they're going to blow him up. And so there she is, like an evil Captain Kirk, in her command chair as all the others. Like that's the back at Project X. That is the set of the Enterprise, and she's signaling to that on her right. That would be Alexander Koenig. Chekhov. Hey, get out. And he's got the key to the doomsday device that'll blow them all up, each one by one, button by button, on one of those little elastic things on his wrist. It's like just such a... I think that kind of sums up great, that they'd never make too much of it, but it's so well thought out. Where would he have the key? Well, where does a bureaucrat keep, I gotta have it handy, but I don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
But I don't want it in my way. It's on a thing. And it's a thing that you hand off to the next person on shift. Yeah. And I just thought that was and that summarizes what a well cared for movie can do. I do, while I agree with you on the cheapiness of the beginning, like once they're on
Corto
Maltese.
Yeah.
I think it was a conscious choice. Because first of all, the sets do get better later on.
Yeah.
I think it was. I hear what you're saying about here. Like it didn't work for you, but I don't think they made it look the way it did just because they didn't have the money. I think it was like kind of no, we wanted a little cheap and cheesy here, and it'll become more real as these characters become more real to us. Anyway, so as far as the craft goes, I was super duper impressed by those elements of the flick. And again, it's like the line of in a movie that had some pretty solid lines, not amazing lines, but still pretty solid lines. It says it does other things. I thought it was just such a great pushback from his daughter as they're screaming in the visiting room of a prison. All right, the story. What did you... Okay, it sounds like we were both worried in the first half of the first act. But what did you think of the film's structure?
Well, like I said, I sort of look at, was I entertained? Did I keep my interest? Those are sort of the two primary.
You never got. Did I get lost?
No.
Was I ever going to go? What the fuck is going on?
And I thought, from that first, when they attack mistakenly attack the rebel encampment, we're spoiler zone, right? Okay. And I thought, that was kind of a funny gag, a little bit, kind of heartbreaking, but kind of funny as well. Poor Alice Braga isn't given lots to do in this. She's just basically sort of reacting to them. Gets about 10 lines, but anyway, I'll be talking about that when we get to meaning. I was engaged for the second and third acts. It was interesting. You sort of run the risk of having it almost too filled, right? It amazes me sometimes you watch a movie and you see the cast list and it's really just 5 characters reacting to whatever they're reacting to. This one, it had that first team, it had the second team, it had the bad guys, you're talking about several bad guys. There's like two local, like the general, the rich kid, the Starro, there's several guys on the island.
The thinker.
That several guys on the island that alone. So and then Peter Capaldi as the Brainiac or
the thinker.
I can't even. Yeah, the thinker. Yes, yeah. But who is former Doctor Who as well. But you run the risk of overstuffing this, and I don't think they did. I think it was pretty deft because you could have easily. There's a lot of characters in this. Most of them are wiped out in the first act, but still, there are a lot of people here. But yeah, I thought it sort of moved along nicely, and he used different ways to tell the story. There's a section of the Rick Flag, Cena, what's his name? Peacemaker. The Rick Flag Peacemaker fight that's just shown in the reflection of Peacemaker's helmet for an extended for about 30 seconds. And I thought that was kind of, you're looking for different ways to tell the story. There's the 2 bullets meeting when Bloodsport and Peacemaker take shots at each other, and it harkens back to an earlier
fight, the earlier argument
that they had too. So that was kind of cool. So
which was like what they were playing with, that idea of, he's in his hands anything's a weapon. His father taught him. It's like, but that's my shtick. Like, and even the Savant had the exact same shtick, which is part of that subverting these tropes in that they had 3 guys, all the identical shtick.
Yeah.
Because you run out of, going back to what you said earlier, what is the risk of these movies is you just start running out of weird ways, weird villains, or weird even heroes. Like, well, how's this one a hero? Well, apparently rats. Sorry, but I thought that was apropos to what you're saying.
Yeah, no. And just to take a quick moment out, Birder's Corner here. The Savant kills an American goldfinch in the prison with his little ball, right? It's an American goldfinch, a male, and he just whips the ball at it and it kills the goldfinch. Later on, when he's killed, they show in the morning his body floating. It's an American goldfinch that comes in and starts pecking and eating part of his brain or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's also the cruel burning of all the lorikeets in the mansion there in Corto Maltese at the end. And so anyway, this has been Birder's Corner.
Did you find any, like, what I found interesting, I guess it's almost like they kind of slide into each act. There's not that sort of, there's not a hook, a twist. Like I mean, the twist is a weird one in that, well, yeah, they go into, what would have been in a standard constructed film when they go into the rebels' hideout and they kill everyone because there is some politics in it, is because they're just dumb Americans going, well, you're all the enemy, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, are you drinking tea? Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Why didn't anybody tell me you'd arrived? Funny story.
I don't know. But I think that's what's interesting is that would have been a huge plot point. And it is the moment at which you get into the second act. They do hook up with Flag. They get new resources, help from these people, but it's not. Usually there's a change in, and there's like no real change there. They're just killing machines who are like, oh, I guess we killed the wrong ones this time. Anyway, you're supposed to come with us. And
yeah,
even then, Alice Brackett's, I'll help you anyway. What? Why? Yeah, I guess it feed you to the shark, I suppose. Like, but there isn't, and I found that fascinating.
Yeah.
There really is no twist. Even, heck, I'd have to look at the timing, but again, when the only time that there might be a little bit of a hook, like a twist, is when they go to rescue Harley Quinn, and Harley Quinn has already rescued herself because she's Harley Quinn. And so again, it's one of those, like, these weird anticlimactic moments at act points where it's like, this is when everything should be, and they're even in deeper. Oh, nope, there's Harley. Yeah. We barely have to start our adventure. It's
what are you guys doing? And he's sort of doing the going up the side of the building.
And it's a great, and well, at the same time, it's a great emotional moment.
Well, another part that I sort of thought, one of those things where you go, okay, that's cool, is when she meets up with the guy, one of the guys,
the first general.
The first general, the sort of this suave, good-looking guy.
Yeah.
And they're having a talk, and he's just saying, I'm going to vanquish all my enemies, kill all their children.
They'll all get thrown to whatever the monster is in there.
And he turns around and she shoots him in the chest, and she said, sorry, there were some red flags there. And I thought, okay, this is almost like a Goodbye Earl, Dixie Chick song kind of moment where, the guy's obviously not a good man, and so she sort of takes care of him. And that I did not see coming. Not having read I'm not sure if it's part of the comic books, but and I was like,
it was perfect.
Okay, yeah.
It's also because in part it's again another subversion, right? There's Harley Quinn. First of all, she is immediately identified. Oh, you're the problem. I'll take care of you. Almost like an homage to Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Blam. All right, we're done. And then her weird little monologue saying, I know there's a part of me but I just think you look the prettiest now. This is in a pool of blood.
And what you're saying earlier, the movie doesn't really take pleasure in the pain of a lot of the many victims, but it's an extended shot of him, struggling for breath and crawling around along the floor, keeping in mind that he's a bad man. So in that case, it sort of does, but it's sort of earned as well, I guess.
Well,
and she's still explaining to him her thinking,
crazy ass thinking.
My girlfriends have told me blah blah blah, and it was kind of like those scenes you don't see in every movie, right? So.
No, well, and I think as gory as it was, it's like cartoony. The villains, these villains are cartoon villains, or they're so awful. It's like, yeah, I want them to feel pain.
Yeah,
but it's also over the top and ridiculous. It just doesn't have the same emotional impact.
Yeah.
I also think, again, subverting expectations, because this is usually what you see with this character who has to, she has to be rescued. Maybe she's seen with the villain later. It's like, what's Harley doing with there? Do we have to convince her not to be with the villain? Or is she, it's like, no, she's totally needs no man. And even the hug at the end of that whole little adventure is a moment of, like, it's, you are my friend. Flag is not making a move.
Yeah.
Flag even looks deflated. Flagging, perhaps.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't get to, he's like, because usually that emotional moment would be because he had just saved her. And now he's getting that reward, but he didn't get to shoot his gun once. Not that he's that kind of character.
Yeah.
But it's anticlimactic for him. And that's what I mean. Like, it's a weird kind of, these weird acts where they're always anticlimaxes as they continue as an unstoppable killing machine. At times, they do run into some obstacles.
Yes. Yeah.
Not everyone makes it.
Mm-hmm.
But.
And that's another refreshing thing, is that they're not afraid, again, aside from the first act, they're not afraid to take out some of the principles here.
The ones we start to care about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of things, though, just regarding story before, and I'll just throw a couple out in a row here. I don't know that they explain a lot of the other characters a little bit. They don't overdo it with Bloodsport. They say you put Superman in the ICU. He's got a daughter. This kind of thing. Rick Flag.
He obviously wasn't interested in being a family man, unlike Sure Shot.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But
a mother with the paternity test.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
I still don't get Rick Flag. Like, I'm not sure his hook. I'm not sure his power. Even that he doesn't feel like a prisoner. He just sort of shows up. Played by Joel Kinnaman, who, if you're familiar with his career, he was kind of a seedy little detective in The Killing, right? Set in Seattle, and he was almost like a Pete Davidson type. Like, he looked unwell. He had sort of So he subsequently sort of got fit, and he's now kind of your square jawed. He's Swedish American,
leading man.
Swedish, yeah. Kind of necessarily bland, but I still liked him. Like there's nothing, like, he doesn't sort of stand out like Idris Elba. The other thing too that what else did I want to mention? I wanted to mention something else, and I've subsequently forgotten it. But anyway, so Rick Flag is one of the ones that I sort of like. I'm not sure that they've really gotten into his character at this point, but maybe it's too late.
Well, I think for Rick Flag, like, he is that. They gave him more in the first movie, so you didn't get as much of him, because you didn't. It's kind of like of Amanda Waller. You didn't need as much from her.
Yeah.
We learn about other players.
Yeah.
Even we see Rick Flag being captured, and then we see him drinking tea.
Yeah.
We don't see any of that other part. We just know what's going on. Like okay, they don't look like soldiers.
Yeah.
When you see him drinking tea, you're not shocked.
Yeah.
I just think he's that symbol of good America. He's the one who goes back for Harley. He's the
Flag.
one. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. He's the symbol of good America, the good soldier.
Yeah.
I think that's his role there. It's why he makes the choices he does, which kind of give Harley et al. Ratcatcher 2. Again, I do like it's that subverting of well, it's why we couldn't afford Ratcatcher 1. Now it's the father died, so she's Ratcatcher 2. Like it's just
I love that
the weasel.
One of her superpowers is that she's very sleepy.
Millennials.
Yeah.
I think that was his role. I also, I mean, if they could dig up, we are in the spoiler zone. It was one of the mid-credit pieces. John Cena survived, so why wouldn't Rick Flag survive? Look at me,
Well, and then that's where the actor's tired of playing Rick Flag. That's where that sort of entertainment business stuff comes in. The other point that I did want to make, I just remembered it, was at the end when Amanda Waller's hit over the head with a putter and knocked unconscious, which Hollywood doesn't realize is brain damage. But anyway, he's not fully unconscious.
It's just holding ice. Instead of being dead.
Stars coming out of it, Little
birds.
Exactly. But the what
long
happens,
bruise coming out like a horn.
More could have been done with that. I don't know that we know, unless I missed it, what happened to the lady that did the hitting, because that was kind of a baller move. Whether she would have gotten promoted or thrown out over the Pacific Ocean or what.
No, they were all fine.
Yeah,
like that's the thing. They're all bureaucrats. They're all fine. She's just looking at them like, I know what you ungrateful employees. Like it's like a manager looking at her employees. One of you hit me. I'll find out which one.
But for the actress,
but even the other one, like what again in the post-credit scene, there they are, kind of going, "Oh, she's screwing with us. She's sticking us with this douchebag because she knows we." Yeah, I think she was holding them all responsible.
Yeah. And it was actually a fairly great moment for that actress who didn't have that many lines. It was sort of a great moment for her when she hits it. She's like, "Get the fucking work," or whatever. Like she really inhabits that moment, and so good for her. For somebody that has maybe a half dozen lines in the show, and she gets a real oomph moment. So that was pretty cool. But I was just sort of wondering.
We got 15 minutes left.
Yeah, gotcha.
Let's keep rolling. What about meaning? Anything beyond the obvious? Hey, putting your crazy secret Guantanamo-esque experiments in another country may not be. Maybe you're making monsters. Hello, Cuba.
Yeah.
Isn't necessarily a good idea. Might blow up in your face later.
Yeah. Meaning,
oh my goodness.
The man.
Shawshank. Oh, never mind. Why am I even saying anything, Jim? You know what? I think this should just be a permanent graphic. Shawshank! There we go, Shawshank. You got a welcome graphic. This will just be our permanent thing. You show up, you get a graphic. Anyway,
great.
Sorry, Jim, you were saying. Meaning.
Meaning. Yeah, I mean, I was sort of thinking about this and the role that, you're getting bad people to protect the states, but not really. They're protecting the American reputation rather than the country itself. As further the point that this, there's all sorts of commentary here. Is Starro, COVID? Is it there's a couple things I thought of during this, is that they were willing to attack the operation to a certain point and then also extract the information that would implicate America in some bad stuff, but they weren't prepared. That's where they wanted to cut it off. They wanted to let Starro run crazy.
They were willing for Starro to run this country that wasn't a friendly country to them.
But that's like releasing, a plague in one country and suspecting it won't get around to years.
How did it get here?
Yeah, exactly. Who'd have thunk it? Oh, look, it's in Miami
again.
now.
I can't believe this blew up in our face.
Yeah. So I think there's there's something in that about the sort of the insanity of intercountries. Sort of it's a bigger sort of a meaning thing, but it's. And America's done this kind of stuff for a long time. They've gotten involved in, name the country, Chile, several African countries, that sort of thing.
Well, so this is what I appreciate the Cuba reference, but there's a part of me kind of going, you know what? Like, you see a stereotype of really an offensive stereotype of a Latin American dictatorship. And it's like, how did these, all of these dictatorships were either at one level or another level, because of, it's my recycling habit. I squeeze the bottle. Yeah, exactly. Ooh. Sound effects. It's like this offensive
lighting.
Woo, fancy. It's a sound. It's these stereotypes where they pick the one anti-American one when it's like, oh, for crying out loud, the American fingerprints on all these like horrors. And then it's like, it's just a stereotype of one, right down to the bar, which could have been in any Vietnam movie.
Oh, yeah,
just make them Vietnam girls dancing. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the things that, getting into that, the part that kind of like, that I had a tough time with, I agree with you. Harley Quinn, in some ways, is such an amazing character, such a remarkable character. And you know what? Yeah, Margot Robbie, it will be one of her, in retrospectives in the future, they'll go, and she really owned it. That said, first of all, I always have one of the tough things I have with this character in general is it's like, you're a psychiatrist. Why do you sound like somebody who doesn't sound and act like somebody who doesn't understand the difference between there, and there? Yeah. That I always had a tough thing with, but maybe there's, I'm open to maybe there's an explanation for that. But here, and this is as much as it didn't objectify her as much, nothing as bad as the first movie. In this one, it's like, that's Frida Kahlo. That, the flowers and everything, mm-hmm. I think that may have actually, I didn't have a chance to look it up in Frida, in Selma Hayek's Frida, but I think there's a couple where she would transform into some of her art and, blooms would come from her. Of course, it's the blooms of the pain from her accident when she was a teenager and everything, and how she managed that. And so, and which is a part of Harley Quinn, somebody who's very in psychological pain. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, wow, so you take the subtle kind of deeper understanding of Latin America and give it to the white woman while everyone else can be a stereotype of a banana republic, without even a shout out to the fact that banana republic is a kind of fucking American banana companies using the American military and American economic power to set up these shitty little dictatorships.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that was that's something that at least has to be pointed out. You know, there's a part of me, it's like, James, you got to read a fucking read a history book. You know, you kind of slacked off here. One other thing that I thought was, again, not intentional, you know, so it's in that unintended subtext. The idea of the absent black father guarantees thief children, you know, like, and it's like, really, do you have to do it with this one? I kind of get the, like, I mean, like, he is a big fan of that idea of fatherhood and redemption through being a good family member and everything. But like, and again, it's something that he may not have, even in the development, he or other people may not have seen it. But if this middle-aged white guy from Canada can kind of, you know, that seems awfully close to that, I suspect I'm not the only one who's thinking it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. You know, as you know, if you're writing something like this, how comfortable would you be writing that character, you know, as a white guy saying like, yeah, black guy in prison, has kids, one's a thief, you know, like, you got to be concerned. You got to be kind of, maybe can we move this around a bit? Now, mind you, it could also be, listen, we got Idris Elba for Money Shot. Okay. Well, I love this scene anyway. It was, and that's it. It was such a great scene. Fuck you. Like, that was not your standard. Like, there was subversion in that. So, I mean, I'm noting it, but it's not, it's one of the reasons I could get past it. Yeah.
It's not there's something wrong there, but it's not damnable.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and like, and there's something wrong with, as great as all of Harley Quinn scenes are, there's still something effed up about that character, and those scenes where it's like right down to the dress she's in and that, and it's like, that's Frida fucking Kahlo, and she's the white woman, and everything else is a stereotype.
Yeah.
Do you really want to do this? You know, and like you said, the one that has almost nothing to do, Alice Braga, where it's like,
10 lines maybe.
Yeah. and
she's an accomplished actress. I mean, she's doesn't come from nowhere.
And another stereotype role of the plucky the plucky revolutionary. Yeah. You know, and the plucky revolutionary is willing to, you know, still help out these assholes who've killed all their comrades. It's like the CIA and the Sandinistas working together to get rid of Somoza. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Especially after the CIA killed half the troops.
Yeah.
Oh, it was an accident. Shit, that happens. Jeez. Sometimes man sharks eat friends.
Yes.
I'd say that's kind of what sort of. Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, back to those key things about family, but also, there's a lot of fun subversion of American exceptionalism, mm-hmm. like Peacemaker. Oh, kill every man, woman, and child. I love Peace so much, and Cena is able to deliver it. Yeah. That unironic, just the right amount of heelness that it's all funny, but you're like, I don't feel good. If you're an American, you know.
Yeah, and you know, I think something has to be said. There's something that I haven't really. I just watched it last night, so I hadn't had the chance to delve into it. But it's that, you know, the Project X is hiring essentially bad people to do work that they eventually grow a consciousness about. So that sort of affects they complete the mission. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then you have to sort of think, well, the Suicide Squad builds itself as these like crazy, insane, irredeemable characters that have been placed into the situation. They might die, but they eventually, turn. It's almost not as advertised. Like they eventually turn good. And it would be interesting to see. With Waller and with Harley Quinn, they both retain that sort of dementedness, right? Yeah. Harley Quinn is in a certain way not irredeemable. I shouldn't say that, but she's that whole Milton thing where she didn't know the driver's name, and this guy with his cutoffs and his sandals kind of walks into the base with him. He gets killed, and he goes, "Oh, Milton." He goes, "Who's Milton?" And then later on, she thinks that Bloodsport's name is Milton. It's just that sort of like she's just gone, well, and in a way, or doesn't care,
I think. Sorry, it doesn't care.
You just sort of you almost can't reason with her as you would a normal person.
Well, I think you're almost dealing with a child.
Yeah.
And there's that innocence of a child. Innocence is, I'm not praising innocence here.
Yeah.
More like the innocence of a child, that willingness to be cruel, and you have to explain that was cruel, or that's, you have children, you had to teach them stuff. They did not wake up with a moral system. It was, you had to nag and punish and rule, give and know. Until it's finally, I might be able to let you outside and not assume you'll just devolve into an animal. Jesus Christ, would you put your hat on? Put your toque on, it's freezing out.
One of the last panels of a Peanuts cartoon is Charlie Brown's being jeered off the football field as the innocent laughter of children. That kind of thing. But yeah, so there's something sort of something weird here in the delivery, in that they promise like almost these sort of Deadpool-y characters, but they're not really. They're all sort of redeemable. They're all sort of, but maybe they're in jail under false pretenses.
I think they do deliver a Deadpool characters, because Deadpool's a good guy. They're all like the ones who survive, and even a couple who didn't, who became like the polka dot guy with his, I'm a fucking superhero. Blam. It was a great and a moment.
Yeah. We didn't talk about the whole mother gag, which was kind of
we just don't. This is what I mean. There are meat on the bones of this film. There's more to chew on here. We could easily go another hour, and it might be worth it, Jim. We didn't even talk about David Goyer's kind of note and his comment on how he felt his Suicide Squad was kind of gutted by the studio. We didn't get a chance to talk about that. There's more to be said. Maybe we'll revisit it. Maybe I know you've got a lot on your plate right now, but maybe on Thursday we can kind of do a little part 2 or something. That said, it is time for those
2 hours.
Few people that are watching us.
Oh, Jesus.
Perhaps none. To tell us, to tell them what we'll be watching next week. We've kind of teased it, but what will we be watching, Jim?
Well, this is the part where I usually
tell our replay crowd.
I've totally forgotten, but we're following up Bahubali 1 with Look Who's Talking To. No, I'm just kidding. Bahubali 2. The Balhu-Balaning, I guess. I don't know. I can't read that.
It's called the conclusion.
You
have the beginning, you have the conclusion, Jim. Come on.
Very, very succinct. Yes, so we'll be looking at that next week.
Sunday morning.
With all its flowing hair and dance numbers and all sorts of things. So,
and you will be traveling on Sunday.
Yeah, I'll see if I can.
But
it's
maybe
sort of
you'll
weird
make
transit
it.
Day. I might maybe able to key in for the first half hour or something like that. But yeah, it's a transit day for me. So yeah, we'll talk later in the week.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. All right. So quickly, let's kind of. Director, does Mr. Gunn pass or fail?
Yeah, he passes. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Fun movie.
Definitely. And considering, and it's interesting as we were talking to Andrea about, like, this is a high-level studio director, while still able to put a vision on his films.
Yes. Yeah.
They do feel distinctly James Gunn while being within a big budget studio system with a lot of notes and big stars with big stars requirements.
Yeah.
Okay. Any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? Let me just see.
On this or on our wonderful interview with Miss Wilson Mirza.
Well, she was great. I think we covered all of it there. I'm just looking at my notes, and I think we covered all the stuff that I wanted to point out. I must say I did Polka Dot Man. I don't think we talked about him enough. I thought
no, we didn't.
The character, and it was nice that he sort of made it almost to the end. Like those shots of them all running together, trying to survive and get out of the building. I thought that was fairly well done, and you felt that they were sort of a team. You felt that they were sort of acting in unison, and I thought that it was fairly well handled.
Yeah. No. Where is he?
David. He's got this long. It's almost like an Armenian name or something. I had it up earlier. David Dastmalchian, which I know I'm mispronouncing.
Well, I can't even find them. They've got. You know what? Nothing more effing frustrating than when IMDb puts on these terrible orders. Like Fernando Martinez as Sliced Domed Soldado, who the guy, it was literally stood there and we watched the top of his head fall off.
Yes, yeah.
Why is he on here, but I can't find an actual character, a member of the Suicide Squad? He
was in Ant-Man. I think he was one of the three guys, one of the three buddies of Paul Rudd in Ant-Man.
Right. One of the safe crew.
Oh, was he the Russian guy?
Yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Oh my
so anyways,
goodness.
good.
But it's terrible. And this is allegedly top cast. F off.
I wonder if it's by appearance rather than anyway. How they showed up in the film.
Now, well, but he shows up a lot sooner than that.
Yeah, that's right too. Yeah, no, you're right.
It's like it's Sliced Dome guy. Who cares? All right, wait. Come on. Yeah, David Dastmalchian, Polka Dot Man. Yeah, he was. He was in. Oh heck, he's gonna be. Oh, he's Peter DeVries in Dune. Very cool.
Yeah, not a small role.
Oh, MacGyver. Just a sec. Is he in? Yeah, he's in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Kurt. There we go. All right, enough of that. There was some wasting of time. All right. I don't have any final thoughts. Like I say, other than my final thoughts to go for another hour. Because I enjoyed this film while at the same time it's got problems. I do like the way Andrea put it. You say you can love the medium, you can love these films, but you can see, hey, this could be better. That's an issue, and this has some of those issues. But it was good. And yeah, Andria Mirza Wilson was fantastic. So great to have, somebody, at times, Jim, especially when we're talking about some of this political stuff, you can feel alone, right? Are we the only one doing it? Apparently we are. But, to be able to connect to some of these other groups that are, at least there's some overlap in our thinking, feels pretty good. And yeah, you know what? Somebody who understands what we're trying to do. I mean, from an entertainment aspect.
Yeah.
Like just a great interview, right?
Oh yeah.
You know.
And the chat went
Also,
nuts. The chat went nuts for her, so that was cool too.
Yeah. Well, and like any person who understands the medium, she's like, that's a great question. Thanks for having me on. It's like wow, it's like we have a CNN guest.
Yeah, exactly. Shashank, if you're still here, make sure you watch the first 45 minutes, half an hour, because that was she was a great guest.
Yeah.
Really classed the joint up.
Definitely classed the joint up. Although we've had great luck. Eric Williams was a fantastic guest from Ohio University. The local boy. Just the U of W. Matt Flisvetter. He was fantastic.
Professor Rick Deckard.
I'm now I feel like, oh geez, who am I gonna book next?
Yeah.
Be hard to follow these folks up. All right. I think it is that time. Jim, with your permission, I'm going to send you to the green room now. I'm going to quickly thank everyone.
Sounds good.
For making it out and rolling the credits, and then maybe you and I can have a quick catch up before you've got to go and take care of your business.
You bet. See you later, folks. Hug your parents. Good night.
Great moment to end on. And here are my hugs for you folks. Shashank, thank you so much for popping in, and looking forward to hearing what you thought about the episode once you've had a chance to hear it in replay. DMG, Richard L, Upside Down, Curtis, so glad you guys could make it. Katie Fowler, thank you very much for making it. All you folks from across North America. Maybe not quite north and south and east to west, but awfully freaking close. Covered a lot of ground here. It was great to see you all. I don't believe I've missed anyone. I don't believe I have. So on that note, I'm going to take off the chat, and I think it's time to turn that down, and let's roll the credits. Bye-bye, everybody.